Now we're going into a section about R&D strategy, research and development strategy, among other things. And we're going to look at new product development first. And this is the Newton message pad. As you can see, it's an Apple product. It was an early entrant into the digital assistant market, and it was exceptional in many ways. It had an advanced chip for a superior processing performance. It was an object-oriented operating system, and it was an open license for the architecture, and this could enable and encourage a rapid and widespread adaptation by other vendors, so that this could be the dominant design. And the weight of this one, and the size of it, and the battery life was better than many competitors. But it was too large to keep in a pocket. And the screen was too small for business people. So both of these customer segment, private people and business people, it didn't fit for either of them. And in addition to that, there was some early problems with the handwriting feature, which made people think that this is rubbish. And this ties into one of the things that you should consider when considering a new product development. You should try to maximize the fit with the customer requirements. And how do you know what the customer requirements are? Well, one way is to actually go out and do some market research, as we talked about before. But you need to have some kind of clear sense of the desired features. And there's a risk that you might overestimate the willingness to pay for these features. And you might find that there's kind of difficult with different segments of client wanting different things. So this you have to deal with in some way. Another thing to think about is to minimize the development cycle times, especially when it comes to technology like the Newton message pad, because that moves so quickly. And you can try to build firm loyalty so that people wait for your product for you to enter the market. But if you haven't succeeded on that, then you might have to try other alternatives. Many development costs are directly related to time. It takes time, and that costs money, of course. And when you have gone through the cycle of developing something new, you want to fully amortize the fixed cost that is related to this development. And then you have to do that before this generation of technology becomes obsolete and there's something new that you need to develop and put on the market. And that's the reason why it's good to be early, because then you have longer time to actually gain back your money. Another reason why it's good to be early is that you early get feedback and can put an upgrade on the market and be even better. But there's also risk, of course. If you put something with poor quality on the market, people might think that, well, this product is rubbish, this brand is rubbish, we cannot buy it later even when they have fixed the errors. So it might harm the customer perception of the product. And it might also put a lot of pressure on the development team. You have to be careful with your assets, because you probably have skilled people with a lot of competence, and if they are not happy in your firm, then they might leave. Or they might even become sick because you stress them out too much and they have to work too much overtime. In the books you have something that is called sequential and processes. You can see the first picture here. then you have a typical product. First you have some kind of opportunity identification, then your concept development, then you have a product design, then you have process design. Product design, you design the product, and process design, you design kind of the factory. How do we have the machines that we need in order to build this? And then you have some kind of commercial production, marketing and that sort of thing. And this takes time. And one way to make it take less time is to use a parallel development. And here you can see a partly parallel process where you kind of squeeze them together, and you start with the concept development before you have finished the opportunity identification. You start with the product design before you're done with the concept development, and so on, to kind of make the cycle time shorter. Another way to look at innovation projects and to get new stuff out there when you're in a big company is to involve product champions. And that might be that you have an idea that you really like, but you're just the product manager or someone, so you don't have the influence and access to promote this in a good way. So then you might talk to someone higher up in the hierarchy and ask that person to be the product champion. That person can then talk and endorse this idea so that a lot of people get to know about it and think it's exciting and good. A risk with that is, of course, that champion might not want to step back when he or she realizes that, this might not actually be so good as I thought originally, because there might be too much prestige in it. And that is one important thing with innovation management and R&D strategy, is to quit projects that do not look like they are going to succeed. We will talk more about that later. You can also involve customers in the development process and ask them what they think is good. Have focus groups with them, and bear in mind that they might not realize themselves what they want, but they could probably help you with finding features that they desire. You can use lead users, and an example of that is Hilti AG, which is an European manufacturer of construction components and equipment. And they turned to the lead user method when they were developing a pipe hanger, which is sort of a steel support that fastens pipes to walls or ceilings or buildings. And the firm used telephone interviewing to identify lead users and asked them if they wanted to participate in a 3-day workshop to identify and find new solutions to their problems. And they agreed to that, and they had this session, and in the end they found one solution that they thought was good. And when they took this solution and reached out to 12 normal users, not the lead users, and asked them if they would use that, 10 out of 12 said that yes, we would prefer this new design. And all but one of these 10 said that, well, we're actually prepared to pay 20% more to get this new design. So that's one way. Another way is to involve suppliers in the development process and see, well, what kind of stuff do you have? How can we use this instead? Would we get that cheaper? And kind of talk with them to find new solutions. And it's also important to involve all the relevant internal actors. And it's kind of hard to know who all of these people are. But some examples are manufacturing. Is it possible to actually build this thing that you now have a prototype of? Perhaps they can give some insight and say, well, when you cannot use that material, you know that we have a very small supplier of that. We cannot produce 10,000 a year if we use this. So they can have really valuable insights, the manufacturing team, and they can also say, well, if you change this a little bit, then the machines in the factory, maybe we can actually use the ones we already have, and that will be a lot cheaper. So they will have great insights into that. You should use the legal department and the marketing department. You should involve the marketing department earlier than you perhaps think, because they want to have a marketing plan ready when your product is ready for the market, right? And you should involve the sales force. Do they know what your product does? Can they sell it? Are they engaged in it? Do they like it? Sometimes it is hard for a big firm to be innovative and creative because there's so much structure and there's so much bureaucracy, and of course other reasons as well. So then the small firms might have an opportunity. And here's one example. This is Thomas Hedner. He's a physician and professor in clinical pharmacology in Sweden. And he and his colleagues, they developed a new cortisone pill that actually made it possible to just take one pill instead of several, because it's dissolved in an appropriate way so that the body got cortisone when it needed it. And here's one quote from him. They could put this on the market really quickly. And this is rare, since we in principle could skip phase 1 test and test the configuration of the drug on ourselves. This since we are physicians who sort of know which risk there is. So we blocked our own cortisone with strong steroids and measured this. In that way we saved 20 years. Then we could head straight to the patients. And phase 1 is when you start testing on humans. And they saw this opportunity. They addressed a disease that affected 250,000 people in Europe. And they need a constant injection of cortisone to survive. And that was a too small an amount of people for the big pharmaceutical companies, but for this small company, it was good. And they became millionaires, or at least Thomas became one. We sold it for like, I don't remember, over $1 million. And one way for big firms to try to be more innovative and more creative is to work with startups. And one example is E.ON. They have their own accelerator or incubator. An incubator, that is an organization that helps startup with what they need in order to grow into bigger companies. And they give companies 30,000 euros and a 6-month business development program. So you can apply for that. And they also give these companies access to E.ON's experts. And in this way, they hope that they will create a creative environment and gain something themselves as well.